Right, welcome back. Another episode. This week we've got Matthew Wood, who the universe put in front of me probably about 4 weeks ago. And I was just saying to Matthew before we started recording that I attend like a book group with there's about 6 or 7 other guys, and we either read a book and discuss it, or we pick a theme and we try to find as much as we can about that particular theme, and we all bring it back like 5 to 6 weeks later. And about 6 weeks ago, I was like, I really wanted to explore the theme of identity. Like, I've spoken to inside the group with people about like when I left teaching and what it felt like. It was a very weird time, one of the lowest moments. And I think a lot of that was to do with identity. But in my like weeks of research, I found a few podcasts which spoke about it, and there was a few books that I could have delved into, but nothing really resonated. And then I had a message from Matthew on LinkedIn pointing me towards a blog post all about identity, and when I read, I was like, oh, yeah, that's it. That's hitting the nail on the head for me. And then there was a follow-up, and I was like, right, I've got to chat to this guy a bit further and a bit deeper. So here he is. So welcome, Matthew. It's great to have you.
Great to be here. Yeah.
I suppose the best place to start is, let's introduce you like briefly. Tell us a little bit about your teaching career and where you're at right now.
Yeah, fantastic. So I've been training in schools for 14 years, taught for 10 years in Birmingham, in a pretty deprived area, as the story tends to go, for us pastoral teachers. And before moving to Cambridgeshire, which is where I grew up, with my family, my wife and 3 kids. So that was a choice based on the age of my eldest at that point, and the transition point for him worked, and we were making the decision what the next bit looked like. So in terms of my career, really quickly was I trained as a PE teacher, which was fantastic, having studied in Birmingham, which is why we ended up there. We did our 20s in Birmingham alongside some dear friends who did family life and had kids, and all of that glorious time in our 20s when we were sharing those life experiences, and quickly went into pastoral leadership, and increasingly, as you do when you take on those responsibilities in school, you fill in gaps in classrooms and other locations. I think there was a point in my timetable where I was PE science PE throughout the day, so it was you can imagine how rainy and wet I was at the end of those days, which was good.
Sure.
And then having moved to Cambridge, I actually taught in a primary school for 2 years, which was a really lovely time, and that coincided with COVID.
Okay.
And before taking a maths conversion course, realizing increasingly that I really loved communicating within a classroom setting and setting culture there. And most recently have been an assistant head teacher, and I will be leaving teaching at the end of this term, having decided that to some degree the petrol tank is flashing, as I said, I think in my first post, but at the same time thinking that I've done it well, and I've passionately given and given and given. And as we'll explore as we go through, there was an opportunity to take a pause, to see what the next bit looked like, to see how we as a family can balance the pie chart of capacity as well as we can over the next bit of life while our kids are still young. And it's my wife who said something really poignant, I think probably quite late at night, and said, you don't have to be Mr. Wood forever. You've given everything, and there's a lot of world who would benefit from a bit more of Matt. And I thought, wow, it was really liberating. So we're on that next bit of the journey, exploring what the next bit will look like.
Well, we'll get into what part 2 looks like in your career in a second, because there's something which I attached to your blog post with the identity, and something which has been ringing around in my head for, well, I suppose since I've had the headspace to really think about it, because for a while I didn't. And even though in those depths of those moments, like particularly the 4 weeks after leaving teaching, and a really short story, I was just asked to leave, and I was leaving an assistant head an assistant head post. I had no idea what I was going to do next because it's all I knew really. And even though I'd had past experiences, it was still weird. I love teaching. I love being in that environment. And so if it wasn't going to be that, I didn't know what it was going to be. And I had 4 weeks, which was really low. And it's only now looking back, I can see us because I'd wrapped up my whole life. I was Mr. C.
Yeah.
What was I without it? And actually, I was lots of other little things along the way, but essentially, that's what I'd wrapped my brain around. So, tell us a little bit about your take on identity and that effect it has on us as a teachers, people, husbands, fathers.
Well, I think what we do matters, doesn't it? And I think that what we invest in becomes part of us. And of course, as we invest in our school life and as we invest in the lives of the children that we're serving and our colleagues and those that we're leading, it's absolutely crucial that becomes part of who we are. I think the unique immersive nature of school life is that it starts to embody who we are and it becomes part of the fabric and the construct of how we view ourselves. And then we can start thinking, well, in the absence of that, what do I do? And with the busyness of school life, with the things that you fix from A to B to C to D and onwards, throughout the school day and throughout the school term, the rest of life can very much get pushed to the side. But it's also, I describe it to some degree, that there's an allure to being a teacher because, like no other profession, in many ways, the affirmation of who you are, what your character's like, and what you're able to do and fix, is incredibly rewarding. And you ask any student, you ask any pupil, you ask any family that you've supported and served, it boils down to the fact, well, you make a difference. I like Mr. Wood. I'll listen to Mr. Wood because he cares, and we can only care when we invest. And when we invest in things, we put part of ourselves into it, and that becomes part of our identity. But myself I think what we can do as teachers, when we try to do things with integrity, when you try to do things earnestly with sincerity, we can start thinking that our success in that area, as with anything, it can start getting mixed into the mortar of our foundations. And as soon as I watched the Robbie Williams documentary just the other day and was captivated by this idea of identity and success.
Yeah,
brilliant things. But they're not the same thing. And we need to root, and I need to root my identity in something greater than just doing stuff really, really well. And I think when you've been a really successful teacher, when you've achieved a lot of success, when you've had that, when you've been, I always think about Ofsted back in the day. It's a little bit different now. I had one actually about 6 weeks ago, but I used to liken it to the Ryder Cup, where you would hear some cheers from different places around the golf course, depending on who's got an outstanding or who's got a good. And I always felt, I'd be sent out. Right, we'll take him to Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood will deliver a solid lesson. And there was a sense of that. This is who I am. I can do this. And I think coming to terms with the fact that I'm not going to say, well, I am a teacher. How are you doing? Or pleased to meet you. This is what I do. Or having, as I've said in one of my blog posts, the word Mr. preceding my surname is a big deal.
That was the bit that I really attached to, because that's work that I've done in the past as well. It's like that reframe. Actually, what's the narrative? If you're in a narrative is like, yeah, you are a teacher, why aren't you a teacher anymore? And suddenly you're not saying things like, I'm a teacher, because that was a big thing. And do you know what? Actually, at the time it was for that very short period of time. It's about 3 months.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, it was about other people. Like often the story, my auntie, even now, she'll ask me about how are you getting on, Rich? Is it okay? Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I've got like the centre and I've got children coming in and it got a tutor working for me now. And she'd be like, yeah, but you are still a teacher, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm still a teacher. It's fine. I don't want to go into all the other stuff. I still teach children. It's fine. Just so she can have that viewpoint. And often it was about, I think that came into the mix for me. It was about that fear of what other people were thinking, because it was almost like I kind of similar to what you were saying earlier on. It's that being a teacher is alluring. It's like when I say, oh my God, I was a teacher, chest is out and I'm like really proud of myself because, no one had been a teacher in my family before. And it felt like a very prestigious thing that I was doing.
Yeah, and I think that that's indicative. I think you mentioned your auntie, and I think that that's indicative of some of these sort of the antecedents of where we get to, and who am I living for? Who am I doing things for?
Yeah.
And particularly as speaking as a man, you say, well, I am. I've got certain things I need to live up to. I've got talents and gifts and potential that I want to achieve, and
Mm.
who and I want to make my parents proud. My auntie, what's your auntie called?
Nina.
I want to make Auntie Nina
Mm.
proud, and Auntie Nina's going to say at coffee that Richard or is a
Yeah.
teacher. These are things that do
Yeah.
matter, and they are good things, but they
Mm.
are potentially masking something deeper, which is a sense of peace, rest, wholeness in who I am as a person,
Mm.
separate to what I do. And
Mm.
I think in one of my more recent posts, I've said that there's a dichotomy, there's a tension between striving and settling and ambition
Mm.
and being satisfied. And I think those words can be mixed up as very similar. But if we're striving, I think sometimes we're unable to just be satisfied with what we've done. Whereas if
Mm.
we say we are satisfied with a job well done, it's a platform to say, right, I can do the next thing. And I think in terms of lots of these thoughts, it's really interesting because these identity things are the things that we've had the insight, the emotional intelligence to support young people with, and indeed families when we get the privilege to speak into their lives as well. And this is what we have, and we say you're more than your exams.
Yeah, of
You're more
course.
than that.
Yeah.
You're more than that lesson. I see what you can become, but even
Mm.
then, we enjoy and we believe in you. And actually, I think we're at a point now with increasingly with messaging amongst men. And you talked about your group where you meet and chat stuff through. I think that's crucial that we tell
Mm.
ourselves that and find space and if we've got a voice to share that with other men, I think it's crucial.
Oh yeah, and there's I won't plug it massively yet because we've only recorded one episode, but there's myself and another business owner called Kevin Wren, who again previously a teacher, now runs a tuition business, and we both connected in a similar way we have around that, because it will these roads all lead to a conversation around our mental health, because essentially that is how we're going to view ourselves in a inside our own heads. And like particularly as you say, males and the when you look at the statistics around mental health with males in the UK, it's eye-wateringly shocking.
Yeah.
And we're both passionate. It sounds like you are as well. It might be a good connection to get us all three together to have a deep.
I'd love that.
But it's we think it's an important cause, and it does take a lot of bravery to keep putting yourselves out there. We talk about vulnerability a lot and sharing vulnerability, but also putting yourself in the right places where you can talk to others, where people will build you up and be part of that process, not just going out and doing that. Like we connecting with a group of guys that having a chat about, I say, sometimes silly topics, but also something that's really in depth and quite involved. So, yeah, I think that there's definitely a role to play there, and we've all got to take that responsibility quite seriously. And I mean, we're coming at it from the viewpoint of, because we're males, but also it's for everybody, really, whoever it is, and everybody needs to hear that it's okay to be vulnerable, and if you find the right group and the right space, you can find support.
Yeah.
So, so in terms of I know we'll bring identity back into this, Matthew, in a second. Let's talk about the next part, because you're about to. What have you got? 4 weeks left? 5 weeks left?
Yeah, four and a half, four and a bit. We go pretty deep into December at our school. So yeah, so I think we finish on the 20th. So
Do you? Wow. I think most are breaking up way before that. Well, they are down here. I'm in the south of Kent. So we go, I think we're going to like the 16th or something. It's a really long break this year. So what's the next part for you? You was talking about the world getting more of Matthew Wood. What are you going to be providing? What's the plan?
Yes. So we've with family life, it throws up a whole range of things. So my youngest has just started reception, which is really exciting, and that just changes the dynamic of what we're doing slightly. We we actually journeyed through a period of an extended period of ill health for my wife, and she is now well, which is wonderful, and that's fantastic. So we've got an opportunity first and foremost, whether you call it a career break, a sabbatical, a pause moment, a breath, for me to step away from the intensity of leading in schools, and to explore some other avenues. Now, some of that may be in the short term, taking up some tutoring opportunities. Being a PE teacher who converted to maths is an interesting one. I was described as the maths whisperer, for kids who didn't like math, which I loved, which was really, really good. And that's, that there's still, as you said, even though you were placating Auntie Nina, the reality is, Richard, and reality is for me, that we're still teachers in the way that we communicate, in the way that we serve, and the way that we build up, and all of those things. So that's one. But the other thing I really want to explore and push is the opportunity to write. And actually, was, to be honest, was more of a linguist than I was a mathematician at school. Although that's what I've ended up teaching. And actually writing blog posts, although it's clearly been partly therapeutic and an opportunity just to and just gather my thoughts and communicate some of my ideas and some of the things. Actually, what is built in me is a real desire to write and communicate in that way. Now, my sounding board at the moment is my small following on LinkedIn, and of course Mrs. Wood, my wife. But actually, there's been an encouragement there to say what your words have power, and
definitely.
And what's what I'd love to do is explore that and say an extension of what I've done as a teacher, which is to communicate to different people in different ways, important messages at important times. Wouldn't that be great to explore that and use my academic background, or to use my ability to persuade, and to create? So I'm excited about that opportunity, and I'm undertaking a copywriting and proofreading and editing course at the moment, which is brilliant, just to add some weight to what I believe I can do, and then we'll push some doors. But boy, when we're talking about identity again, you're only one or two thoughts away from, wow, there was some serious stability there, and there's some uncertainty. And I think if ever there was an opportunity to really unpick where we base that sense of self-worth and self-esteem on, I mean, I wouldn't be suggesting that you that you leave your job without a certain one to go into, by any stretch of the imagination. But given this opportunity, I've got a sort of a one-off to say, right, this is what we can do. So
I'm going to take you back a little bit, and I want to make sure anybody who's connecting with this, listening, and is resonating to the things that you're talking about. I wrote a writer down before we started talking as a note to come back to, because when I was reading your blog posts, what came through to me was that the topics that you were covering were quite complex, but they were really accessible through with the words that you were using, and and that's why it resonated with me, I think, because actually it was quite easy to read, but it took me to it wasn't simplistic in any form, of anybody's imagination. So I can't wait to share that within the group, and we'll make sure people have the links to those so they can have a look through them. We were kind of joking before that obviously you was in the pastoral and teacher space before, so Facebook was a no-no, but now you're allowed to be an adult, make choices for yourself. You're now on Facebook, so it'll be really good to be able to share this after people have listened and connected with it, to have you come in as a guest inside the group so that we can have a live Q&A. We can make it more personal and people can ask you questions, because I often say this. I run it was an 8-week course. It's now going to be a 12-week course. It's all about business and growing a business, and particularly for tutors and tuition. But there's a bit in there where we talk about mindset, and particularly money mindset. And we have a task right at the beginning where we say, how many of you have Googled how to make money outside of teaching? And obviously everyone's like, yeah, hands up. Yeah, me. What's always in the top 5 things that you could be doing that's a transferable skill from teaching out? And it's always copywriting, proofreading, editing, because they are transferable skills. So it'd be really interesting to pick your brains about that transition. I mean, look, if you're like me, anybody listening, and you're not a natural writer, because straight away I was like, copywriting, what's this? I was like, oh no, that is not for me. I do not find that stuff easy at all. It's like, yeah, blood out of a stone most of the time. But for some, it's a skill, or it's a forgotten skill, because we haven't had the chance to practice it. And once you give yourself the space, the headspace to do it, and perhaps you might be worried about ideas, trust me, once you have made that decision and that intention to do something different, you do create headspace, because you're not so consumed by the day-to-day of the work and the worry and the concern, because it actually turns into something way more positive. So what made you turn to copywriting? You were saying about being more of a linguist at school. Was that a forgotten skill for you, or have you always been a writer of some sort?
Yeah, great question. It's funny actually. My son, my oldest, he wants to be a football commentator, and
Great.
he won a competition and got to be on Radio Cambridgeshire and commentate.
No way. Amazing.
A couple of weeks ago, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking actually that I used to write match reports for my school matches and things, and I didn't write them for my Sunday team because I didn't have a photocopier at home. But there was teachers who would photocopy, and I would deliver them to all the players each week. Actually, my auntie is a writer, so I guess maybe grew up around a book appearing that she had written, which I suppose is quite a. We talk in teaching about cultural capital, don't we? It's quite a lucky thing to see on your mum and dad's bookshelf, a family member's book.
Yeah, sure.
And then there would be times when if teachers would leave, I would at school as a pastoral leader, I would always want to honour them and get the kids involved in that. Yeah. It was a real important cultural thing that I'd want to do. So we'd make videos, or we would knit together poems and overlay them over pictures of that member of staff and things like that. So I think there's always been a case of trying to say, what do I want to say, and how do we say it, and writing seems to flow in that regard. And it took my wife to say, Matt, do it, have a go. What have we got to lose? What have you got to lose? And my second blog post was entitled Fear, and I've just, I guess, like a stream of consciousness, I've just listed some of the fears that come in late at night, and I've just punctuated that with mortgage. Yeah. And alongside what will I say? Tell my kids, how will I introduce myself? And all of those things. And one of the ridiculous fears was will I have enough money in my pension pot to buy my grandkids like ice lollies and stuff? It's like, it's crazy. And these are all rational or sensible thoughts masquerading, or I should say fear masquerading as rational, sensible thoughts. They are absolutely fear driven. And I've just got a little extract from that post where if you're happy with me to just read a little section.
Of course, yeah, go for it.
On fear, which I think sort of summarizes it. So it says here, in what other context would we consider just another 10 years to be a rational response to something as immersive as the job we do? My children would have left in 10 years' time. There's a decision to be made. My mortgage, what else could I do? Pay cut, holidays. What will I say to colleagues? What about my peers and all their successes? The what do you do introductions? Pension, what will I do? Pension, will I be able to treat my grandkids? I'm currently 38, so it's a way off. Pension, would a career break have a big impact? What will my kids say that I do? Mortgage, I've got 12 months left. Failure, missed potential, others can do it, letting others down. But the kids love you, the kids need you, you're so good at teaching. Mortgage, interest rates, it matters, it really does. But then, and I said, intersperse these with the general mix of tiredness-induced interactive whiteboard and HDMI cable disaster concerns, an education equivalent to arriving at work with no clothes on dream, and it makes for a restless night. But, and this was a key moment, and it's okay, inverted commas, it's okay not to be Mr. Wood for the next bit of life. There are lots of people who need Matt. The trusted and wise encouragement of my wife finds a small platform from which to sound amidst the soapbox fears from above. I hear it, decision made, sleep. And it's a point where I think I really love telling stories, and I love trying to communicate what's going on and what people may be going through. And I think if you season that with a pastoral heart and a desire to encourage and build up, then maybe there's just a little niche for me to find.
I think that's really powerful. All of that was super powerful, and I really hope that's an encouragement for people to go and like seek you out on LinkedIn, have a read through your blog post, because they are powerful, and there's some strong messages in there. And it leads me to I suppose a bigger question, which we've kind of touched on, but it's that support and that support system, like, because we do carry around those fears that you're talking about, and it is a block to growth, and it does slow us down. It's sometimes I can remember I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 41, nearly 42, and it's the second or third year in teaching, and I was exhausted. I had a tough class. Do you know what? They weren't tough. They were lovely. They were young and they were immature. Like I was a year 2 teacher.
Yeah.
There was some characters in that class, and it was taking everything that I had. And I can remember going into the staff room, that sanctuary of space where you can go and just, sit in the corner and cry, or get some advice. I remember leaning into one of my friends and just saying, "Do you know what? There just must be a better way of earning 30k a year. There's just like, as much as I love this, there just has to be a better way." And all of those things you list down, mortgage, or for some of us it's rent, or holidays, and would never been on my list, and that's a podcast for another time. But there was just responsibilities that I was just weighed down by, and the fact that I did actually love,
and it matters,
70% of the job, and that's what kept me going. That's what kept me going back in every single day.
Yeah.
So what do we do when we're in that space? Like you mentioned your wife, and that there's just an air of support doesn't quite do it justice, but that to hear someone that you love that's in your life saying to you, "Look, you don't always have to be that person. Look, we've got this time, however long it is that you've decided for you to move away, do that healing process, look at what we can do next, and whatever that may bring, it's fine." To hear that and have that unwavering support behind you, like, how important do you think that is for all of us?
Absolutely crucial, yeah. And I think we need to seek those people out. I think I can find myself in a position where if I can be as tired as anything, but if someone needs my help, I'll slip into gear and I'll try and fix situations. And I think that's a great thing, and that's one of the reasons why I would have great relationships in my life, because people will know that I care about them. But it can also be a little bit of a trapping as well, because you can build a construct around being the person who's fine and can help people, as opposed to exploring actually, how am I feeling about this, and why am I doing this, and what does it look like to be Mr. Wood, or the person that everyone expects me to be. So I think that's crucial. Now, clearly, having a spouse or a partner is wonderful in that regard. I think the other thing to cultivate, and you touched on it yourself, is and speaking as a man, and obviously that would be the same in with women also, but to speak to other men, I think is absolutely powerful. And I think it takes one person to start the conversation. It takes one person to say, "Actually, can I speak to you about this?" or "I'm struggling in this way." And again, with the backing of my more emotionally aware than I am about myself wife, she would forever prompt me, or she would set up times for me to say, "You need to go and have a drink with so and so," or "You need to why are you not why don't you go and speak to who you're going to speak to about this?" And I think it is crucial. I think it's absolutely crucial, because particularly when I view this next part as exciting. Clearly it's nerve-wracking. Clearly there are things which are uncertain, and all of those elements of control that made things kind of okay, money wise, and mortgage payments wise, and bills wise, and all of those things, and introductions, I'm a teacher wise. they're not going to be there now. But that is exciting because we've made a decision. However, one of those constructs of identity and self-worth is not there, or is at least looking different for a while. So now's the time to talk, because we can all easily replace that with bravado, or yeah, it'll be fine, and yes, or yeah, it's a fantastic decision. Well, actually, there's going to be times where we think this is really scary, and am I a good enough writer, or am I actually just a bit arrogant in my ability, and all of these kind of nonsense thoughts which we can all have. You just need to own, and
oh, we definitely all have those.
Yeah, and having space with others is crucial.
Do you know that I think this? I'm going to tack something in on the end of this, and then explore your initial thoughts. I had a tutor come is working for me right now. He does a few hours a week, and then does some private tuition. And when we first met about 6 months ago, with the view to starting in September, and he's a great guy. It's that classic story, just being burnt out at school, knowing there's another way of living, and he's taking a bit of a risk. But we meet. I wanted to meet with whoever sort of comes into my tuition world, so to speak, with them at least sort of once a month properly, where we can sit and talk about what's going well, what's not. That classic, just to make sure everyone's okay. And in the last time we met, he had clearly started getting a bit worried about the money situation, and he promised himself something, which meant he found it really hard to then backtrack. So his promise was, I'm not going to do supply. And then he's the fear of, can I pay the mortgage, around everything. He's given himself a little bit of time. He actually has until January, so he's actually got a little bit more time, but he's worrying about it that it hasn't grown as fast. Although I did give some words of wisdom around the time, like, this isn't going to grow as fast as you think it is, because it was like, I think I'm going to be like replacing my teacher salary by this point. And I was like, actually, you probably going to find that that's quite a tricky thing. It's a great target, and we'll rush towards it as fast as we can. And then there was an acceptance, and it felt like a failure to him. And to him it did. And I was like, this is like a stepping stone. And this, again, it's a reframe. And so is there an element of, have you made any promises to yourself?
A really great question. Yeah. And as soon as you said that about made a promise, I think, well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because already there's a sense of self-worth that is wrapped up in that promise.
Yeah.
What would be wrong with going and doing some supply? It would be absolutely fantastic to go and do, and it would look very different, and it would be part of the journey there. So for me, if that were to be the case, and then that would be fine. I think it's interesting, isn't it? This idea of fear and self-worth, it masquerades, it comes in different guises, and this idea of I've got to take control of this, and I've got to set the narrative with this promise, which I'm not fully in control of being able to keep. It's almost like, well, we need to give ourselves a little bit of a break there.
I agree 100%. And that's coming from a really strong mindset of being really clear with the purpose that something is going to play along the way. And if we don't know what that is, because like you say, that word uncertainty can come into it a lot. I'm uncertain. Okay, if you're uncertain, don't have these big, bold promises sort of weighing you down and then going, I can't do this because I promised myself I wouldn't. When perhaps actually we might need to do something. Whether that, I mean, I've used supply as a kind of catalyst for that, and only because that's part of the story. But it could be whatever you have decided to do and leave behind. Like, sometimes just leave a little bit of freedom and leeway for you to go, look, do you know what? The biggest purpose and vision for my life is this. However I get to that point, as long as I'm moving forward, I'm all right. And the having the purpose there for. I chat to Sharon Corley, who runs a tuition company called Connexus, who's an amazing advocate for tuition and a really good friend. And she talks about having a North Star. What's your North Star? And then it makes a decision process so much easier, because is this about me reaching my North Star? Then it's a yes. Because if it's not, it's a no. And it makes it so much easier, because it's the fear, or the string of fear, unravels. And I'll give you just a tiny snippet into the inner workings, because a lot of people go, oh yeah, that's me. The tutor who comes to work for me says, But if I go back, it's likely they're going to want me because he's actually really good to stay. Yeah. And then I'm scared that I'm going to say yes, or it's going to lead to something else. And I was like, would that be part of your purpose or bigger vision? He's like, well, no. I was like, well, say no. We still have the choice. I said, and having someone to chat to, I was like, come and talk to me before you do anything. Come and chat with me first, because we will sort it out between us. We will, we'll get it back on track. But it's just interesting that I know that we're talking about identity, but that fears come in, and that thread, that it's a very thin thread for some, but as you start to tug on it, it unravels into something much, much bigger.
Yeah, and I think within that we talked about the sort of the foundations of what we build our confidence and identity upon, and I think pleasing other people and comparing ourselves and having the narrative sorted and set are all little elements of control that we think, right, this is great, this will look good. And with the introductions, and I said, I could go various ways in the past in terms of being a teacher. So I said, if I'm a PE teacher, then I'm going to be immediately approachable. If I'm a maths teacher, then okay, fair play. You must be clever. Little do they know. And or I'm a PE teacher who converted to maths. Well, I've got to be careful of that, because that could really start some questions. And if I'm not in the mood for questions, then or I'm an assistant head teacher, and in that regard, job done. Okay, I can. Yeah. So that's an example of we do try to control the narrative, and I think any type of career transition is it needs to be an acceptance that however hard that is, I'm not in control of that. In the absence of that narrative, now that's got to be liberating, because as we talked about, the things that we build this confidence and this self-worth on are not always healthy, because often it's about how I look and how much I've earned and the success that in effect validates me. There's got to be more to it than that, hasn't there? But in the absence of that narrative, then, like you say, we're potentially vulnerable, aren't we, to fears, concerns, circumstances, knockbacks. And that's where that transparency and honesty, and people around you who remind you of, you described it as your North Star, or remind you of why, and you offering to and imploring, I guess, your new tutor colleague to come and speak to you about it. That's crucial, because we need people to be with us and run alongside us on the journey.
Matthew, I'm so pleased you sent me a message, because this seems like a really good connection. And I know this won't be the last time that we connect, and there's going to be a lot of synergy over the next 2024, because that's the year I want the group to grow, and I want to make sure the podcast gets out there more. So I definitely see you as a part of that. And let's make a connection with Kevin Wren, because that's also going to be pretty awesome for 2024 as well. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Richard. I just think it's a really interesting time, career transition. I think there's a lot of as soon as you go onto social media and you start putting yourself out there, I think that sense of comparison is huge. And I think in teaching, that sense of sort of external pressure and that external judgment and doing the right thing, I think, is there. But I don't think you're then free of that when you step outside of that exists in different ways. So I think getting alongside people is really, really important, and seeing the work that you're doing and other people on LinkedIn who are working with teachers and people making that career transition is key. What we don't realize that we do as teachers is we negotiate with diplomats. we are able to synthesize and take real complex information and make it simple. We're able to project manage. We're able to relationship manage. Just commending the work that you're doing in terms of supporting great people do great things in the next phases of their career is key. So it's lovely to be part of that tonight, and hopefully in the future.
I appreciate it, Matthew, and I can't wait to talk again. I think I've already got the next topic for us. Actually, I'd like to talk to you about relationships, because that's kind of been a theme throughout everything that you've said, and obviously reading between the lines of relationship with your wife, but also like we was talking about with even the pastoral support, which kind of aligns with my own career. And then I can see how that is going to be a catalyst for the next part of yours, because that's something which I've used a heck of a lot. And it's sometimes it's a natural skill, or it feels automatic now because I'm old, I suppose, in terms of career. But yeah, I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate your time. And there's so many golden nuggets here for people to learn from. I'm going to just say one more time, like go and find Matthew on LinkedIn. We'll make sure all of the social links are shared. And I look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be great. I'm sure we can do some great stuff together. Thank you for your encouragement. Bye.